So if you all remember, not even that long ago, we were heavily counting down the days to Nintendo's E3 2021 presentation, and a lot of the reason for the hype at that event is we believe Nintendo would focus on Zelda's 35th anniversary and give us some major game announcements, and we did get a Game & Watch announced, but none of the other heavily rumored titles. And in today's video, I want to discuss whether or not we can still expect Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD to make their way onto the Switch or not. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. As I mentioned, guys, we are talking about the Zelda 35th anniversary titles that we were expecting to be announced that never got officially announced from Nintendo. We just got the presentation of a Game & Watch system, which will play the original Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2 Link's Adventure, which is a very cool commemorative machine, but at the end of the day, it's not really what we wanted. Oh, and Link's Awakening's included in that collection also. So it's 3 handheld classic Zelda titles. It's a really cool thing, but it's not what the fans were expecting, as there was a lot of rumors and reports from credible sources that were stating that in 2021 we would most likely see at the very least Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD announced and released. And you know, there has been a lot of talk that the reason that that did not happen is obviously Nintendo does want to have more games to release, as they are waiting for Breath of the Wild 2 to be finished and released, and if that game does not come out in the 2022 time slot, we would most likely see those titles kind of be the buffer for while we wait on that. You also have to have the conversation about Nintendo not wanting to steal any steam or any spotlight from Skyward Sword HD, which just recently released and is doing incredible in the sales charts, and I think it's being well received by fans this time around, which is something that did not happen previously on the Wii. So I think it makes a lot of sense for Nintendo to hold off on these titles and not even let fans know that they were coming, because you know, you have to keep in mind, if fans were already kind of down on Skyward Sword HD and they knew we were going to get that released, and then right around the corner, like in the October or November window of 2021, we're getting Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, well then a lot of fans probably would have skipped over Skyward Sword HD altogether and gone ahead and waited until Wind Waker and Twilight Princess came out, because those were, you know, way more heavily beloved by the fan base. So it wouldn't have made sense for Nintendo to do it like that, and I think that that's at least a portion of the reason why these games have not been announced. I do think that these are some of those done titles that Nintendo just is kind of holding back for when the time is going to be right to actually unveil them and release them. But I do want to start off by talking through all of the evidence that we have around and who has said what when it comes to suggesting that these games are real and will be coming to the Switch. There's also a lot of rumors of an Ocarina of Time remake. I hope we see that at some point in the future, and I do believe it's coming eventually, but I think the more likely, concrete, closer games are going to be Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD. So one of the main culprits for the starting of the rumors of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker making their way onto the Switch is Andy Robinson, and he is a gaming journalist for VGC, and he successfully predicted Mario's 35th anniversary and the celebration behind it, and even the 3D All-Stars game, before Nintendo had given us any official info on that. So he's definitely got connections with Nintendo, and he has some insiders that he gets information from. And so to start off, he did tweet out after the announcement of Skyward Sword HD. He said, "For those disappointed with Skyward Sword HD Remaster, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are 100% coming this year, so that's at least one good 3D Zelda." Then of course, when that did not happen and many fans were disappointed, he did take to Twitter again and update a statement on his original tweet, and he said, "Update for this on everyone who's now flooding my mentions. Predicting dates is a fool's game, and I should have never used 100% in the original tweet. Zelda fans, sit tight." Basically suggesting that sit tight meaning they will still be coming, but 100% in 2021 was the mistake, and that he's not confident that these games are coming in 2021 anymore. Then you had other industry insider Jeff Grubb, who has successfully predicted a number of different Nintendo related, especially Xbox related titles before they're officially announced, and he said, "I think we're not getting Wind Waker and Twilight Princess for Zelda's 35th because Nintendo isn't sure we'll get Breath of the Wild 2 in 2022. So if it needs the Zelda things next summer or fall, it's good to have that in reserve. Still, that's weird." He then continues, "I'm not pretending to have perfect insight into Nintendo, but this lines up with the company's recent strategy of holding these kinds of games even after they're ready. Pikmin 3 Deluxe was done months before we got it." Then a leaker from Twitter that I would say is less reputable than the last two sources that we talked through, as they have not gotten everything right, but they have gotten a lot of things right. And they actually successfully predicted WarioWare, where back in 2020, November of 2020 to be exact, when we had no official confirmation or insight that there would be a WarioWare game, the leaker by the name of Marco Mero tweeted out, also WarioWare is another one of those games that are mostly finished, waiting for a 2021 release. The Fire Emblem remake should be announced early next year to be released in Q2 summer. Paper Mario 64 remake is still happening. He then also leaked out Metroid Dread, which we did not know at the time was around the corner back in February of 2021. He says here, Metroid Prime Collection will release next fiscal year. The 2D Metroid is coming late spring. The title will be a throwback to the past. Aeon abilities coming back, some of them brand new. The fusion suit will be back. And then when going back and forth with fans saying that you can't predict Metroid games, he tweeted out on February 16th, 2021, Fake Droid Dread, which is clearly just saying the title before we knew that that's what it was called. So I do think that this person at least has some kind of inside connections enough to, put very specific things like that out there. And I'm sure dates and certain parts of what he said probably are not all accurate, but I mean, everything got moved around due to COVID. So it's not a surprise that things are fluid in Nintendo's situation right now. But he then continued on to discuss with a fan who asked him a question about these Wind Waker and Twilight Princess ports. The Twitter question was, what do you think? I don't think they're lying. I'm believing what Jeff Grubb said, that they're holding Twilight Princess and Wind Waker off for the case that the sequel isn't ready next year. And Marco Mero replied, that's what I think too, but it's not just because of the possible Breath of the Wild 2 delays. Also to cover possible weak months without games, Fire Emblem Remake, Style Boutique, Savvy, and Metroid Prime Collection are suffering the same fate like Pikmin, Wario, and Metroid did recently. So I definitely think with all that information out there, and it's not unlike Nintendo to have games sitting around ready to go, maybe suffering from the QA process and not having it totally finished, but basically having it on the shelf, and when they need it, they can, do a full media push and ship it out to, the entire globe. I mean, that is something that is common for Nintendo to do. And I don't think, I've been saying this, even though I did think we would get more Zelda stuff for the 35th anniversary, I don't think Nintendo likes to flood market a lot of the same franchise at the same time. So Skyward Sword HD is clearly the title it's supposed to live and be in the spotlight right now. And I think that as we get to the end of 2021 and into early 2022, we can then talk about what other Zelda games we might see while we're waiting on Breath of the Wild 2, which I do now at this point believe will be a late 2022 release. Probably the holiday game is at least what I would expect Nintendo to aim for. But then of course, they did have Mr. Anuma clearly said we are aiming for a 2022 release, which does not sound like the most solid statement when a game will be coming out in that given year. So that all remains to be seen. Zelda games are infamous for being delayed and being kept, in the workshop until they are truly up to standard and ready to go. And that's why, part of the reason why it's such a big hit with all the fans, because they're always amazing quality titles, and we don't have any Cyberpunk 2077 situations going on with Zelda games. But this is my personal take on the entire situation. Where there's smoke, there's fire with these Wind Waker and Twilight Princess ports. I think these are the most likely games that do need to come to the Switch. They're already practically done on the Wii U version. They're two of the main best-selling Wii U games that have not received a port to the Switch at this point. And I do think that it's just one of those things that only makes sense for Nintendo to bring them. But you do have to have a conversation of if we're really going to see them in a combo pack, which I hope we will, but I do think it's not unlike Nintendo to actually port Wii U games over at full price individually. And if it's not attached to something like an anniversary, which is more of the celebration and where you kind of see Nintendo maybe do a compilation similar to what we saw with Mario 3D All-Stars, I think that because it's technically not going to be Zelda 35th anniversary games, we have a solid chance of seeing these actually released individually at $60 a pop. So I want to know from you guys if that would actually still be worth it for you, if you would buy them individually at 60 each, or if you would need these to be in a combo pack because maybe you already purchased them on the Wii U and you don't feel like it's fair for Nintendo to charge full price for these ports. So please leave me your thoughts on that in the comments down below. But I do think that, again, these games are going to be coming to us at some point, and I would personally put my money on the year of 2022, probably in the beginning to middle part of it. I would be surprised if we get a fall direct and they're like already ready to go for the end of this year. That definitely could happen, but the more likely year for me is 2022, as I think Nintendo's going to want to do as much things as possible to get all the Zelda fans ramped up and plugged into the series as we await the long-awaited release of the sequel to Breath of the Wild. But at this point in the video, guys, I want to know all your thoughts and opinions on everything we talked about today. Do you tend to believe these industry insiders and some of these leakers and people who are putting these rumors out there? Do you think there's really no merit to this, and Nintendo probably isn't planning on bringing these games over from the Wii U to the Switch at any point in time? So make sure you leave all your thoughts on the topics we talked about today in the comment section down below before you leave the video. Thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. I do truly appreciate you all sticking around until the end. I do at this point in the video want to invite you all one more time to join Sunbro Nation if you haven't done so already. Do so by subscribing below, hit the like button on your way out if you enjoyed it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. That's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you all have a great day. Sunbro Nation, out.